At 3:27, the Kurakov power plant in Donetsk lay under a heavy pre-dawn mist, its 600-foot cooling towers looming like dark sentries. Without warning, a Russian-North Korean strike group erupted from hidden tree lines. Mesta S self-propelled howitzers, Grad rocket launchers, S-300 air defense radars, armored vehicles, and infiltration squads packed with North Korean infantry. This was no mere raid, it was a full-scale strike aimed at crippling Ukraine's eastern power artery, threatening millions of homes. In seconds, the night's calm shattered, igniting a multi-domain clash that would rewrite the battlefield. Don't take your eyes off the screen until the secret is revealed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about this battle in the comments section. Thank you for watching. The thunder that ended the Kurakov plant's pre-dawn calm did not fade, it multiplied. Within minutes of the initial assault, Russian artillery rings formed a tightening noose around the complex. From concealed tree lines and abandoned rail spurs, BM-21 Grad launchers lost ripple after ripple of 122mm rockets, each salvo screaming across 10 miles of night sky. Behind them, Mesta S self-propelled howitzers hurled 152mm shells with machine-like rhythm, hammering the 600-foot cooling towers and transformer yards. Overhead S-300 radars swept the black air, ready to swat down any Ukrainian aircraft that dared to climb. Transformers erupted in blinding flashes as control sheds shook under shockwaves, scattering metal shards hundreds of feet. Yet Ukraine's gunners were not passive targets. Counter-battery crews, using 155mm howitzers and precision radar fixes, fired back from masked positions 12 miles away. Their steel arcs cut into Russian firing grids, forcing gun teams to break, cover, and relocate under fire. The exchange became a duel of range and nerve. Russian batteries tried to saturate key substations before the grid could be isolated. Ukrainian crews shifted aim by seconds, seeking to blind enemy spotters and slice gaps in the barrage. Each side maneuvered for inches of ground and seconds of timing, knowing control of those first miles around Kurakov would dictate the long fight ahead. The artillery storm was only the opening movement of a battle set to sprawl across air and earth. The Russian barrage roared for nearly 40 minutes, but its tempo began to falter under relentless Ukrainian counter-battery fire. Spotting the split-second lull, Ukrainian commanders seized the moment. Over encrypted channels, the order flashed. Multi-directional strike, go now. High above the smoke-draped plant, a lattice of recon drones dove through gaps in the cloud deck. Each carried thermal cameras and laser designators, feeding live coordinates of Russian gun lines to fire control centers. From the substation's maintenance tunnels, tracked mini-ground robots nicknamed Skuda rolled silently, their rubberized treads gripping damp concrete. They mapped choke points and relayed targeting data back to mobile artillery and rocket teams, creating a digital picture of every hostile muzzle within miles. At the surface, explosive detection dogs surged forward with handlers, weaving between shattered transformers. Their mission? Sniff out mines and tripwires left by Russian-North Korean infiltration squads. Once the all-clear bark came, armored bulldozers and mine-clearing plows followed, carving a safe lane wide enough for main battle tanks. With the path opened, Ukrainian Team -90 seconds rumbled ahead. Their 125mm guns trained on surviving Grad and Mesta S positions. Behind them, infantry fighting vehicles and MRAPs packed with mechanized troops advanced in staggered formation. Overhead, mobile air defense units mounted on 8x8 trucks rolled forward in tandem, their launchers scanning for hostile helicopters and low-flying cruise missiles. The moving shield gave the spearhead freedom to push deep without fear of sudden airstrikes. Electronic warfare vehicles completed the layered assault, jamming Russian targeting radars and scrambling drone feeds. Precision artillery, guided by Skuda data, rained on Russian strongpoints just seconds before Ukrainian armor reached them, timed so tightly that defenders had no chance to reset. By the time dawn hinted over the horizon, Ukrainian forces had punched through the outer fire ring and reached the main generator yards. Smoke from burning fuel tanks mixed with morning fog, but the assault lines kept moving, their rhythm intact. The Kurakov fight had shifted from an artillery duel to a mobile, multi-domain offensive. What began as a desperate defense in the night was now an orchestrated counterstrike, setting the tone for the next brutal phase of the battle. By the time Ukrainian armor secured the main generator yards, Russian command knew the ground barrage had failed. Their next move came from above. With a guttural roar, Su-35 fighters and Mi-28 attack helicopters swept in low over the misty Donetsk flats, hoping to catch the spearhead exposed. The early light flashed off their missile rails as they fired salvos of air-to-ground rockets and 30mm cannon bursts, aiming to break the armored corridor before reinforcements could dig in. But Ukraine had planned for this aerial riposte. Patriot PAC-3 batteries, hidden in tree belts outside Kurakov, powered up and locked on. At the forward edge, mobile air defense squads armed with Stinger man-pads fanned out across rooftops and turbine housings, creating overlapping kill zones from 100 feet to altitudes of several miles. Within seconds, contrails streaked upward, as PAC-3 interceptors and shoulder-fired missiles lanced through the morning haze, forcing Russian pilots into steep, evasive climbs. The fight quickly turned into a three-dimensional chess match. First-person view, FPV, drones, launched from launchers tucked behind shattered substations, swarmed like guided hornets. Some carried small explosive charges to harass rotorcraft. Others simply shadowed targets, feeding live coordinates to ground gunners. Ukrainian gunners used that data to time 125mm tank shots and 35mm autocannon bursts with uncanny accuracy, turning narrow streets and tower gaps into ambush zones. Electronic warfare trucks added another layer, jamming Russian communications and data links across a 20-mile radius. Pilots heard only static as navigation cues blinked out. Separated from their ground spotters and from each other, Russian crews were forced to rely on visual flight and guesswork, limiting their attack windows to seconds. Above the 600-foot cooling towers, contrails, smoke, and drone trails braided into a deadly lattice. Missiles exploded in midair as Patriots intercepted air-to-ground rockets, while Ukrainian man-pads hunted low-flying helicopters ducking between power pylons. The roar of jet turbines mixed with the crack of tank guns and the electric buzz of drones, creating a layered battlefield where altitude and timing meant survival. By mid-morning, Russian pilots had expended most of their ordnance with little to show. 2 helicopters and a fighter burned in the fields west of the plant, their wreckage sending black smoke thousands of feet skyward. Ukrainian armor, shielded by this aerial defense, continued to reinforce the generator yards. What had begun as a desperate defense on the ground had now expanded into a controlled vertical battle, proving that Kurakov's sky was as fiercely contested and as skillfully defended as the earth below. The aerial duel finally ebbed, leaving the sky above Kurakov streaked with contrails and smoke. On the ground, Ukrainian armor and infantry used the breathing space won by Patriots and manpads to push inside the battered power complex. The fight now shifted from open fields to the steel and concrete labyrinth of the plant itself, a tangle of turbine halls, cable tunnels, and service shafts stretching hundreds of yards in every direction. Mechanized infantry moved first, packed into MRAPs and tracked carriers that rolled behind armored bulldozers fitted with heavy rams. Mine-clearing vehicles swept the entry lanes, their flails clattering as they detonated hidden charges. Every yard mattered. Skuda tracked mini-ground robots scuttled ahead, their sensors sniffing for tripwires and remote detonators inside dim turbine chambers. Real-time camera feeds let engineers mark and neutralize traps before the main assault teams advanced. Explosive detection dogs followed close, noses to the scorched concrete. At every barked warning, Sappers halted the column, removing IEDs wired to coolant pipes or disguised in maintenance lockers. Then the advance resumed. Room by room, floor by floor, the clash of steel boots on metal catwalks echoed like war drums. Russian, North Korean squads fought back fiercely. Using stairwells and overhead cranes for cover, they launched RPGs and hurled grenades that ricocheted down echoing corridors. Close-range firefights erupted at 30 feet or less, where reflex and grit counted more than range. Yet the Ukrainian plan was relentless. Seal every exit, drive defenders toward preset kill zones, and avoid unnecessary civilian risk. T-90 tanks provided point-blank fire support, their 125mm cannons punching through reinforced doors and creating shock that rattled entire wings. Infantry teams flowed in behind, sweeping with carbines and shotguns to clear each chamber. Overhead, small FPV drones hovered inside the plant like silent observers, relaying live video to commanders outside who adjusted movements with split-second precision. By late morning, the inner maze was a patchwork of secured sectors. Enemy fighters found themselves pressed into shrinking corners as Ukrainian units methodically closed the ring. Each captured control room and sealed stairwell meant another slice of the Kurakov plant reclaimed. What began as a night of distant shell fire had become a brutal, room-to-room struggle, but the momentum was now firmly in Ukrainian hands, setting the stage for the next decisive push. By midday, Ukrainian troops controlled most of the Kurakov plant's interior, but the battle was far from finished. Russian commanders, unwilling to concede, threw in their reserves columns of T-72 tanks and fresh Mista-S howitzer batteries rolling hard toward the southern approach. Dust clouds rose like storm fronts as nearly 24 armored vehicles advanced, seeking to slice through the Ukrainian spearhead and reclaim the generator yards. Ukrainian field commanders had anticipated exactly such a counterpunch. While frontline platoons maintained pressure inside the turbine halls, a separate deception plan unfolded outside. Swarms of recon and FPV drones, some no larger than a football, darted low across the shattered perimeter, broadcasting false radio chatter to simulate a withdrawal. Electronic warfare trucks amplified the ruse, imitating command signals and drawing Russian sensors toward carefully chosen coordinates. The bait worked. Believing the Ukrainians were regrouping, Russian armor surged into the exposed southern corridor straight into a set of pre-plotted kill boxes. From concealed firing points behind slag heaps and transformer bunkers, T-90 tanks and self-propelled guns unleashed synchronized volleys. At the same moment, precision 155mm artillery shells, guided by drone feeds, bracketed the kill zone from three sides. Explosions ripped through the armored column. Two T-72 seconds erupted in fireballs, their turrets blown skyward. Mista-S guns tried to respond, but counter-battery fire smashed their positions within minutes. Survivors found themselves pinned by overlapping fire, unable to maneuver in the narrow approach roads. By early afternoon, the counter-strike had disintegrated. Burned-out hulks smoldered along a half-mile stretch of the southern perimeter, sending oily smoke thousands of feet up. Ukrainian forces tightened their perimeter and pushed supply convoys through the newly secured lanes. The failed Russian thrust, meant to break the momentum of Ukraine's advance, instead confirmed that Kurakov's defenders were dictating both the tempo and geometry of the fight, paving the way for final containment. The southern counter-strike lay in ruins, its wreckage still smoking when Ukrainian commanders shifted to the final phase: contain and conclude. Perimeter units tightened the cordon around the Kurakov power plant, sealing every service road and rail spur within a 5-mile ring. Long-range HIMARS rockets struck key junctions beyond that circle, cutting off any chance of Russian regrouping or armored rescue. Inside, loudspeakers echoed through the steel caverns, broadcasting in Russian and Korean. Safe passage guaranteed for the wounded. Leave weapons and move east. Sappers and combat medics prepared marked lanes to receive prisoners and casualties. Meanwhile, engineering teams rushed to stabilize high-voltage lines and cool the 600-foot towers, ensuring no chain reaction would threaten nearby towns. By late afternoon, resistance had dwindled to scattered snipers quickly disarmed. The objective was clear: finish the fight without harming civilians or crippling Ukraine's own power lifeline, proving that precision and restraint could coexist with decisive victory. By nightfall, the Kurakov power plant stood intact, its turbines humming steadily, while the battlefield around it lay silent. The Russian North Korean strike group was crushed, artillery destroyed, armored thrusts broken, infiltration squads disarmed. Strategically, Moscow lost a key lever to darken Ukraine's eastern grid, undermining its winter pressure campaign and casting doubt on future joint operations with foreign auxiliaries. The question now lingers: if such a fortified composite battalion failed here, what target could still be considered safe? Ukraine's careful evacuation corridors underscored that its war aimed strike systems, not civilians. As the last Ukrainian units withdrew in disciplined order, a black plume coiled thousands of feet into the gray dawn, a stark signal that multi-domain defense can outpace even the boldest combined assault.